Hey, hello everyone. I had a question from Nick about creating shading for illustration. So one thing that I like to do before I put down any lines is I like to plan it out. And I'll plan it out with either mechanical pencil or I'll plan it out with red pencil. I don't have one here, but I'll always start with that, or I will draw it before I start painting, because a lot of times when I'll paint with watercolor, I don't want to see the pencil afterward. So if it's a piece where I don't want to see any pencil, I'll either start with a pencil that's red, where it just kind of, you don't really see it much afterward depending on the colors, or I'll draw it beforehand and then I'll have kind of a plan mentally. So before you start any kind of shading, you need to figure out where you want your light source to be. So let's take a look at this book. Now this book is a Thunder Lizards, How to Draw Fantastic Dinosaurs by Steve Miller. And I've learned some of this through just looking at illustration, and I've also learned it when I read about really good illustrators from the past. And you can see it in good illustration when you have a subject and you want to highlight it or create a focal point. Wherever your focal point is going to be, there's also going to be the highest amount of contrast in the image. So here, of course, the focal point is the T-Rex, right? And we see a lot of contrast around the outline of the figure, which gives us really a sense that we're to look right there, right? You'll see this in other things as well. And if the more you look, the more you'll see it. So in this image, the very first thing your eye is drawn to is probably going to be right in this area. And that's because we have the highest amount of contrast here. These guys, we don't see as much. There's not as much contrast, but because the dark kind of frames it, and it's an arresting subject matter, we tend to see it more. So when we're approaching illustration and we're thinking about shading it, you need to figure out first where you want the person's eye to look. So I want the subject to be the focal point, and our subject today is this comic book heroine that I've been working on. Her name is Zarya, and she lives on an alien planet, and her society is she lives in a very tyrannical society. And here she is, and this is kind of a flashback to before we meet her in the comic book. This is kind of a flashback where she's remembering one of her last battles with this tyrannical entity, and she lost all of her people and her family in this battle. So it's going to be very dramatic lighting. We're going to have really some darks and some lights and some really good midtones. Thank you. Oh yeah, nice, hun. So we have to define that first, and in a piece like that, you want drama. So we're gonna have the light coming in from here, coming in from probably the I wouldn't say midday sun, maybe almost evening sun after a long battle, right? So the highest points of contrast are going to be here. We're going to see light in here. Her hair is going to be dark and kind of lit. And of course, we're going to see her dinosaur's face kind of lit in a lot of contrast. We're also going to kind of see a lot of dark here. Now, if I wanted to further map this out, I would take my pencil and I would do maybe some cross hatching. There we go. And then we're going to use a lot of nice midtones to establish the setting, because this is a kind of this isn't really for anything except for me to communicate an idea, to interpretive and quick, because I can't take a lot of time doing this. I've got other things that I need to focus on. So I'm going to get out the paints and I'll do a quick wash and I'll show you what it looks like.